All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice question series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. The link is in the comments below. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. D'Angelo is working with a fourth grader who has started to cry when presented with unknown task demands because they do not want to complete the task. The fourth grader does not engage in these behaviors if they know how to do the task. If D'Angelo wants to reduce crying, which of the following choices represents the most appropriate alternative behavior? All right, a couple different things going on here. First, what is the question asking? Well, we're asking about D'Angelo. He wants to reduce crying and he needs to choose an appropriate alternative behavior. Remember, whenever we reduce something, we want to try to replace it with something else so the learner can still try to meet their wants and their needs, right? We usually call it functionally equivalent. And that's usually what we're going for, something that's functionally equivalent, but we also want to accomplish the goal at hand. And so D'Angelo wants to reduce crying. So, what do we know about crying? Well, we know the fourth grader cries when presented with an unknown task demand for escape. They don't want to complete the task. However, the fourth grader does not engage in crying if they know how to do the task. So, if we can teach the fourth grader an alternative to crying to get out of the task, and we can teach the fourth grader how to do the task, we can reduce crying. So, what is an appropriate alternative, or what is the most appropriate alternative behavior given this information? A, have the fourth grader ignore the presented task and do something else. A might stop the crying, but it doesn't solve the issue because next time the unknown task is presented, the fourth grader is likely to cry again, and the fourth grader is not engaging in learning the task. So A doesn't really fit. B, have the fourth grader communicate that they need help. B could be effective. One, the fourth grader can have an alternative to having to do the task themselves. It's an alternative to crying, it's an alternative to escape. And also, they can learn how to do the task, which in turn will reduce crying. So B seems pretty good. C, have the fourth grader get up and leave the room for a 5-minute break. C has the same problem as A, where the fourth grader is escaping. And when they come back and get another unknown task demand, we haven't done anything different. So all we can really expect is the same, which is more crying. And then D, have the fourth grader get a friend to do the task for them. D is just another way of escaping the task. And while the task might get completed, the fourth grader is not actually doing it. And so they're never going to learn how to do the task, which again is going to reduce crying if they don't do it themselves. So the most appropriate behavior, given all the information, is B. Have the fourth grader communicate that they need help. Anthony's nail biting significantly increased during finals week. He would like to decrease the behavior back to pre-finals week levels. Anthony starts to catch himself starting to bite his nails and will squeeze his hands tightly into a ball for 3 to 5 seconds instead of biting. What is Anthony demonstrating? So we're looking at Anthony's behavior and what is he demonstrating? So what do we know so far? We know Anthony is nail biting and it's increased significantly during finals week. So he has his behavior is starting to increase. He now wants to decrease the behavior back to pre-finals week's levels. So how is Anthony doing that? Well, he's catching himself biting his nails and is engaging in a different behavior. He's now squeezing his hands tightly into a ball. If we have a question like this where the whole question has no social mediation, then start thinking about self-management, right? Because when we talk about socially mediated, that's the majority of the behaviors, especially if you're working with children, right? Because you're mediating most of the interventions. In this case, there is no social mediation. Anthony's just on his own. And so we need to start thinking about self management. Now, what kind of self management is Anthony demonstrating? A, self talk. Is Anthony giving himself instructions and talking himself through something? Well, no. He's simply catching himself biting his nails and then squeezing his hands tightly. We don't see any instances of self talk. What we do see is B, habit reversal. Habit reversal is an intervention where you try to stop a behavior chain by noticing when the behavior chain is occurring or when it's starting and engaging in something else. And so by biting the nails, or instead of biting the nails, squeezing his hands, Anthony's trying to reverse this habit with different behaviors. What about C, positive practice over correction? Positive practice over correction, one, is socially mediated, and two, it's when you engage in the right behavior over and over again, which isn't necessarily happening here. Anthony is simply catching himself in the midst of a behavior change and doing something different. And then D, mass practice. Mass practice is a self management strategy, but again, it's doing the same response over and over again, which Anthony is not doing. Anthony is simply catching himself, biting the nails in the behavior change, and then replacing that with an alternative behavior, trying to reverse the habit. So Anthony is demonstrating B, habit reversal. A behavior analyst who has a contract with a local school designs a token economy that includes a response cost for Angel, a 5-year-old boy who will make noise during class and refuse to answer questions. The behavior analyst wants to monitor Angel's behavior change regularly to ensure the treatment is working. What method would be most appropriate for the behavior analyst to use? Lot going on here. Big question, okay? Focus on the question first. Don't change the strategy. Don't jump to the answer choices searching for help. Understand the question. Question is asking, what is the method that the behavior analyst should use given the scenario? What does the behavior analyst want to do? The analyst wants to monitor Angel's behavior change regularly. So the goal is to monitor Angel's behavior change. Now, what do we know about Angel and the behavior analyst? Well, we know the behavior analyst has a contract with the local school. They're using a token economy with the response cost, and the behavior is making noise during class and refusing to answer. So we have all this information, right? What it boils down to is if the behavior analyst wants to monitor this behavior change, what do they do? Okay, simplify it. What does the behavior analyst need to do? What's most appropriate to monitor behavior change? A, ask Angel's teacher each week to describe how Angel's behavior has changed. A sounds very indirect, right? A sounds like an interview. A is not going to be all that objective because we're not looking at data, we're not looking at graphs. The analyst is simply asking the teacher basically their opinion. A is not a bad method, right? Because the analyst wants to collaborate and it's good to get that information, but it's not going to be most appropriate to get the best idea of behavior change. B, provide ongoing parent training and meetings with Angel's parents. That might help, again, as an indirect strategy to notice any change that parents can see, but we're still not focused on what we're trying to do, which is the behavior change given the token economy and the response cost. We need something more direct. C, evaluate the token economy data sheet monthly to ensure tokens are consistently delivered. All right, C's closer. What's the problem with C? Well, one, monthly is not nearly frequently enough. A month is a long, long time. We need to be evaluating things much more frequently than monthly. Two, just because tokens are delivered doesn't mean behavior is changing. So C is better, but we can do even better than C. D, have the teacher fill out a checklist daily to record instances of making noise and refusals to answer. What is D going to do for us? One, it's going to give us a daily look at the behavior, making noise and refusing to answer. And two, we can start to graph this and see, is making noise and refusing to answer changing? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? What's happening? D is the best answer. And why? Well, it's more direct than A and B, and then it's more frequent and more relevant to what we're trying to measure and understand than C. So D is the most appropriate method to use. Have the teacher fill out a checklist daily to record instances of making noise and refusals to answer. You're evaluating some data from your technician where a partial interval recording measurement system was used. The technician recorded 4 responses based on the following data using 5-second intervals. What feedback might you give your technician? All right, we have kind of a personal management or a supervision question mixed with a measurement question. All right, but it's not overly complicated. The feedback you might give your technician based on this measurement, which is partial interval recording, and partial interval recording says the behavior needs to happen for a split second during intervals to count. So when we have interval recording, we have to figure out, well, what are our intervals? We're using 5-second intervals. And so for the behavior to count as a response, it needs to happen at any point in those intervals. Now, the technician recorded 4 responses using 5-second intervals based on this data. So let's look. We had 0 seconds, which would be no responses. 1 second would be a response. 5 seconds would be the second response. 0, 0. Then 2 would be the third. 5 would be the fourth. So to me, it looks like the technician did what they were supposed to do. They recorded 4 responses based on the data. So what feedback would you give? A, you would tell your technician they should not count 0-second responses in the future. Well, there's no indication they counted 0-second responses here. So doesn't seem to be necessary feedback. They recorded the correct number of responses. B, you would tell your technician they should only count the 5-second responses in the future. That would be incorrect. That would be for whole interval recording. So B would not be proper feedback. C, you would tell your technician that their data look good based on the measurement system. Yes, sometimes it's good to just give praise, give good feedback, and it looks good. 4 responses, partial interval. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Data looks good. Let's keep monitoring it. But as for now, the data look appropriate based on the measurement system. And that is good feedback to give the technician. Keep up the good work. Paul wants to use a high probability request sequence to get his client to answer spelling questions. Paul starts asking his client to do several random actions of varying difficulty, including saying their phone number and folding laundry, prior to having his client answer the questions. The client mastered these tasks in the past. What issue would Paul most likely face given this information? So let's think about what Paul's trying to accomplish. He wants to use this high P sequence, which is when we give a bunch of or a few high probability requests. So known request, easy request, request that we know our client can quickly and reliably engage in, followed by the low probability request, which is answering spelling questions, which is fine. Now, Paul is asking several random actions of varying difficulty, saying phone numbers, folding laundry, prior to answering the questions. What's the issue here? Because the client's mastered these tasks. What might come into play? A, the high P request may be too challenging. Sure, we don't want actions of varying difficulty for the high P request. We want those high P requests to be very reliable. We want our learners to be able to omit those responses on a consistent basis. If you're asking of varying difficulty and long responses, like saying a whole phone number or folding laundry, it's not really going to start building momentum. So A could definitely be an issue. B, the high P requests are unknown. Well, they're not unknown because we know the client mastered the tasks, so that's important information. C, the low P request is not socially valid. Answering questions does seem like a socially valid behavior to target. And then D, the low P request cannot be evoked this way. Well, sure it can. There's absolutely a chance, right? So we can't say it can't be evoked this way. There's certainly a chance if you use the right request that you can get questions answered. Based on the information, the issue that Paul is most likely to face is that these requests may be too challenging. Thanks for watching. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com. The link is in the comments below. Subscribe for all of our updates. Be sure to let us know when you pass. Work hard. Study hard. See you soon.